Hello.
Hmm.
Aloha. Mm.
Mm. Hello. Hmm. We might look at the other page pages. Say hello. Hmm. Very good to see you.
Yeah, we hope you're doing well. Mm.
Oh,
So, yeah, let's get started sitting together. Mm. Just being very careful about the transition from what we feel like is not sitting into sitting. Just gentle, slow, careful about attuning to what we notice as the impetus internally for the transition. And what is it like to let the eyes come to close? Start to invite the body into a little more settledness and stillness. The sense of the attention shifting from its focus on what we might think of as the external, whether that's conceptually or just in the physical space or around. Not cutting it off, not rejecting it, but a sort of slight shift into a more receptive posture of attention that sounds from the world around us are still happening, of course. We're still receiving light and shadow, the eye door. We notice the qualities of temperature or the movement of air on our skin, sensations caused by our clothes, soft or rough. And there's also this sense of what's happening more inside the body, where sometimes the realm of concept or images draw a blank. We simply have the experience of pressure, motion, movement, release, hardness, softness. Perhaps noticing we don't even need to try to force these physical sensations into an idea of the space that we take up with our body. Sensations taking place in time, but maybe not so defined in space. Pressure rising, passing, coolness or heat, gaining intensity, losing intensity. This is where we notice a kind of pressure, firmness, softness, looseness. Perhaps sometimes we notice what we might think of as a quality of water element, moisture, or dryness. Sometimes it's just that station of cohesiveness or boundedness, distension, openness. Sensations happening throughout the body. You may notice the mind conjuring images of what it believes it's feeling, preferences, liking, disliking, enjoying, displeasure, aversion, grasping, rejecting. Meanwhile, the sensations arise and pass on their own terms, according to conditions that are hard to fathom. And you don't hold it against the mind, against the heart, trying to understand, trying to find stability in this change. A raft of pleasant, keeping away the unpleasant, wandering elsewhere, trying to create stability in thought, identification, concept. It's well trained to do it, amazing in its capacity, trying to protect us, keep us secure. But we also can be sensitive to the mayhem that it creates, the anxiety, the complications, the stress that don't really resolve. the issue of the instability of all phenomena, and actually can make it worse. So we recognize the heart mind also as unstable, subject to change based on condition. Expect what we actually experience, seeing that our preferences for the mind are also a source of frustration, entanglement, dukkha. And so we can let the body be the body, let the mind be the mind. Not wrestling with either, not receiving the body moment by moment, sensations arising and passing, changing, watching the mind arise and pass moment by moment based on condition. And watch the rising of an emotion, watch its fading away. The arising and passing of a knowing, consciousness itself as the object of that knowing, of that consciousness, comes and goes. Watching, receiving the body as the body, the mind as the mind, their interplay, one leading to the other, back and forth again. Being that the mind is so fast, easy to identify with, slippery. Encouragement is always the primary object of our receptive awareness. Yeah. Anchor outside of that, in the body, in the realm of sound, also a physically based experience. Maybe the whole body, maybe where the hands are touching, where the breath is coming and going at the abdomen. Only because it's a somewhat easier place to anchor, build that connection. But the mind can be watched the same way, respected, honored, and unhooked from. Mentality and materiality, arising and passing, co-creating, and ceasing together, one after the other. Over and over, slowly, slowly coming to appreciate, understand the nature of this process we call life, distance, coming to be and ceasing. So the bell kind of worked. It sounds like, okay, well, the mystery continues. Hmm. So we have some time this afternoon to take any questions that folks might have about your practice, instructions, any offerings, teachings. Um, yeah, just any way that we might be able to support you in your practice. And you can see, just as Suzanne has done, if you have a question, you can raise your hand. So at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there should be a little button there that says raise hand. You can click on that. Or if it's not visible or not working, you can type into the chat that you have a question. You can ask it. We'll call on you or wave your actual hands around and we'll see that as well for sure. So Suzanne, let's see if you should be able to unmute. There you go. Great.
Hey, Suzanne.
Hi. Hi. For many weeks now, I haven't wanted to do any formal practice. And recently, I gave myself permission to stop coaxing and nudging. I'm overwhelmed with elder care. My mother's made the transition to hospice at home, and my father's very frail and old and grieving, but also very, very angry. This is happening and resisting all of the increased levels of care my sister and I have had to set up. And so it's difficult. And I don't want to practice. I'm tired and I don't want to look. And I'm saying this because I'd like you to help me honor and respect, appreciate the ways the practice is showing up, even when I can't practice. So maybe like it might be just 1 second in a day where I remember that there is metta, or maybe I'm outside and it's still beautiful and green and I see the green leaves against the blue sky and I remember to wish the planet well. Or if I've had another really draining phone call with my father, I might remember for a second that I can't change my parents' karma. But it might be really, it's like this is not all happening in a day. It's just like tiny, tiny moments. But I know they are important and I know they're powerful even when they don't feel powerful. And so I just like some encouragement to appreciate and honor and respect how the practice shows up in whatever way I can right now.
Mm.
I'm sure we both have some thoughts about it. I mean, I think my first just initial response, Suzanne, is I just don't think you're making. I think you're you're making an error in what is practice, because I think you are practicing, and that you might not be meditating and practicing like Vipassana in that, which like that's a legitimate clear distinction and something that I think is important to talk about why that might be the case. But the other side of it is like this is, I do think it is something that I don't know if it's like the way that the kind of, Dhamma gets transmitted and into the West or something like that. But this idea that like the practice or the path is just meditation versus all the other things in our lives that we're doing, right? I mean, there is the Eightfold Path is really how it's most importantly framed. And to really understand that like what you're doing for your parents. I mean, and in different ways, right? For each of them in terms of what they're requiring and what they're requiring of you, or what those responsibilities are requiring of you. It's very powerful, and it's really beautiful. And I was just here trying to, I don't know, it's not opening, but I was trying to find the, maybe before we finish, I'll be able to open it. But the Mangala Sutta, right, where it talks about, the Buddha talks about,
Yeah.
blessings and what is the greatest blessing, and
Yeah.
this idea of like, in this tradition, the greatest blessings aren't things that just happen to us. They're the things that we do, and it's the karma that we create. And there's several of them that are about taking care of our parents, and so that sense of like, you're doing it, you are doing the practice, and this is perhaps more on the side of dana, sila, and of like kind of carefulness in speech, and how do we get through these intense emotional conversations with people that are really difficult, and just kind of like you're saying, where you realize like you can't protect people from themselves and their own momentum, of action and mind, but that you're doing something really beautiful and really important that is also very taxing. I know Michelle will have more to say, but I do want to say that it makes sense, and I think is totally appropriate, that there might be periods of time where you need to be in the mode of action, right? And like attending to this, attending to that, and to stop and feel the pain of it and the exhaustion and the resentment and because probably there's stuff with siblings. I mean, it's not just them, right? There's all kinds of, it's everything.
Yeah.
Your whole life, right, arises in these things. And so maybe the sense of now isn't the time where you feel like it's appropriate. You've been sitting long enough to know that, like, okay, you might trust that there's a period of time where you're needing to just kind of be the sort of like clear doer, attending to things. And that, who knows, in a week it might be different, in 3 months it might be different, where you're like, okay, actually I need a break, and I need to build back in sitting time every day. And you might hit a different point in it where you feel like something different is appropriate. But it doesn't seem strange at all to me that you might feel some period of time where it's just not what's being called for, and it's not necessarily going to help you um, live up to the responsibilities that you have right now in terms of those relationships and all of the moving parts. So, I have more to say, but I don't know how that resonates, or if, Michelle has more she wants to offer.
I think it's really helpful to be reminded of Dana and Sila. I'm practicing those in a really big way. And patience, the part of me of patience. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and renunciation. I mean, the sense of you're not getting to do what you want to do, right? I mean, there might be, of course, parts of it that feel good and you're glad you're doing it. But there's
Yeah.
another part where it's like, oh, you are relinquishing some of your own, how you would be spending your time if this wasn't being called
Yeah.
up, for sure,
Yeah. Yeah. That
which
is.
is painful. It's like, okay, that hurts sometimes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Are you ever laying down in the course of the day, or not just like before you go to sleep?
Yeah.
Are you at all resting?
Yeah, but I'm always having an audiobook going. Like when I'm not doing, I want distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of that, listening to audiobooks.
So you're resting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Does that feel like a kind of metta for yourself?
I never thought of it that way. It could be. It could be. Yeah.
Because sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
the same action,
Mm.
all you include in it is the intention, right? Like it could be that you might just be missing that
Mm-hmm.
piece where you
Yeah.
could, before you turn the audiobook on,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
all you would have to see, it's all
Yeah.
motivation, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's really
Yes.
interesting how
Yes.
you could do that without that motivation, or you could do it with it. But I think ultimately that motivation is there.
So interesting, because sometimes when I'm listening to audiobooks, like I'm so agitated these days, I'm immediately bored. And then I'm switching from one to the other. And it feels so unwholesome. But if I can just switch the intention over, it's like, yeah, that's what I need to do right now. It's okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's all that. It's all going to be. It could be that your dad's resistance is infectious, right? You might be, like that you could be infected. Like,
Oh my
there's
God.
all kinds of stuff
Yeah.
that goes on, right? And so
Yeah.
it's being able to accept um, that level of protection of the distraction.
Mm,
You
mm,
see, it's all
mm,
recognizing that it's the same, the same thing when I'll say, before you go to lunch on retreat, that you can notice the intention to nourish yourself and have metta for yourself, and that's the motivation to walk to lunch,
mhm, mhm.
versus an automatic pilot just
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
And it's usually some kind of desire that we're not even aware of, right?
Mhm.
This is really, it can be deep practice when you start recognizing it's all about motivation.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll work with that. Yeah, yeah,
It's super important.
yeah.
Like we talk about healthy distraction.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about an audiobook, I would categorize it as an extremely healthy
Yes.
distraction, right? Like you could be doing all kinds of stuff that would be really harmful, but you're not. You're just
Yeah,
like trying to
yeah, yeah.
and one thing that I notice when I'm exhausted a lot from caregiving is
Mm-hmm.
the sense when I can't, Vitaka Vichara,
Mm-hmm.
good
Mm-hmm.
old Vitaka Vichara, and it's like, oh, there's no Vichara, and then it's tired, or oh, there's no Vitaka, right? And it's like that's when you notice that the the attention, if you're restless, has a surplus. Like on top of it, you have a surplus of
Mm-hmm. Right,
energy. You
right,
can't focus it, right?
right, right.
And so it's really interesting to notice how you actually can notice that when you even shift. I don't know how you switch an audiobook. Actually, I just did a remote, but when you switch, just like in a few seconds,
Ah,
do some metta.
ah. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
yeah,
can even
yeah,
like see, I love this
yeah.
stuff because it's like I play around with it so much. So it could be that you notice 3 seconds of equanimity where you totally unconditionally accept that you are going to change the channel again, right? It's like, wow, I must be really like
Yeah, yeah.
exhausted, right? Or you have to like work with it as like, oh, but you can see acceptance, loving kindness, or compassion,
Mhm.
mudita for like having a healthy distraction.
Yeah, yeah.
That's 8 seconds at the most.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That I'm going to work with that. Yeah. Hmm.
I think
Just
that
to point out
both of
that
us, well,
Michelle's
we'll have a
just
duet, but yeah, I'm glad that
you can say one.
no, I'm done. I think you're great. You
Just
have
yeah,
more
just
to
what
say.
Michelle point. I mean, one thing to say, restate part of what Michele just said, of just that Vipassana is also noticing not just what's arisen, but what is not present and what's not arisen. And so just that sense of like, oh yeah, there's no patience, or there's no equanimity, or there's no loving kindness, or there's like that still qualifies as practice, right? In terms of recognizing the absence of things. And I think there's, that healthy kind of boundary that you mentioned of this is, you cannot take on someone else's karma, right? That this is your mom's karma to live out, and your dad's, and that there is something about that is like very healthy and very real. And it's also not just like some random stream of karma that this is like actually your whole life has been influenced by these unfoldings, and whoever you are they're not, whatever these patterns that you're encountering in them are not, they're also not wholly unfamiliar to yourself internally, right? To say the least.
Yes.
And to appreciate that, of like, whatever mysterious weird thing it is, of like, what are we negotiating like over generations, and what is your responsibility, and what it's like there's like what's not, and then there is the side of like, yes, these things are also evocative for you, because part of you are, amongst other things, a confluence of those two karmas, right? And patternings, and that your responsibility in this lifetime is distinct from theirs, and yet what this is evoking for you is not significant, right? It's like an important time to also recognize what your responsibility is, and that you're taking care of yourself, and you're being careful, and you're being thoughtful about it. It just feels like you're doing it right. And to whatever degree that can be kind of helpful and supportive of just trusting that this is a lot. I guess that's like the point of it. It's like, actually this is a lot. And it's going to be evocative on like a lot of intense, very powerful levels, and that you do what you need to sort of steer that process, and also kind of just protect yourself and mitigate the intensity of it, while also growing, which you're doing. So
Thank you, both of you, so much. Thank you.
I actually have one more thing to add, which is it's along the line of what Jesse's saying, is that how we hold what practice is and what it looks like. But I think in these times that you're describing live, that could also hold it as a deep purification, right? And so it, like the karma, right, Jesse? But there's both your parents, right? It's not just one, right? And it's I like to use the example of what we say in retreat. So, right, it's like when things are difficult, and on retreat, when we're not able to access equanimity or loving kindness, right? And there's difficult stuff comes up, right? And we say that's purification, right? And you have to be more careful, and that it's the same thing. It's just that we don't recognize often that when life presents a very intense, long period, we might be so burnt out. We might get so burnt out we don't recognize that it's actually purification. And it's on the generational lines that Jesse mentioned. I'm not bringing this up out of like in some vacuum. It's like it's all part of that, holding it with that kind of love and wisdom. And it would be nice if you could recognize there's no patience and accept, right? Be with having no patience, right? That's practice. Practice isn't just having patience, it's recognizing it's okay to have no patience.
And I'm sorry, I have to say another thing, or I want to say
I
another
know.
thing.
Please
It's
don't
like me, you know,
apologize for
yeah,
the duet. Yeah.
that like assuming your parents are not like meditators and yogis and your siblings are not, the it's like, you know, it's like when lightning strikes, it's gonna find grounding wherever there's a connection to the ground, right? And you're that. Like that's just how it's gonna be. And they're not gonna be conscious of it, or your siblings or whoever else is around, but that's you're gonna play that role. There's going to be some part of your system that is playing that role, and it's not anyone's fault, and they can't not do it. And it doesn't have to be something you're actively doing, but to also not take it personally that this is just the conditions that you have the practice and you have many years of practice, and there's a capacity there to hold a lot energetically and emotionally. You could just use emotionally, but like that others might not have. And it's there's gonna be a way that you're called upon, you know, for that. And it's part of what's exhausting about it, but also, you know, part of what's beautiful about what you can offer. Um, and you know, to not kind of hold it against anyone either. It's just the way things are. Yeah.
That's wise. Thank you. Because I'm the dad whisperer. I'm the one who kind of can keep him on track, and it's easy to resent my sister. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I've said this before many times, but when my dad was in the hospital for 2 months before he died, and he had been in so much pain, but there was a point where on his chart it said hostile, and then there was a certain point that it was erased, and it said extremely extremely hostile. But you know, there were rough times, you know. And then at the end, toward the end, my family was in the room, and my sweet oldest niece was holding my father's hand, and she was going, I can't do this even with a straight face. She was going, Grandpa, just go toward the light. And she's a born again Christian, and she's like, Grandpa, just go toward the light. And she kept saying it, and I was at my watch going 10, 9, 8, 7, and it was like this was a karma that I knew I couldn't stop, but I and my dad exploded, and I felt like everybody in the whole city of Boston heard my father just, I won't do it, but I'll say the words, but I won't do it, he said, because it was so intense, and he just screamed out at the top of his lungs, I don't want to go toward the God damn light. And this is like seconds before my dad died, right? Like, and I just said to everybody, I said, okay, you guys go to the cafeteria, get some comfort food, leave. I'll, I'll handle it. Talk about having to ground. But there was a few seconds, you know how so much can happen in a short period of time. I remember having a thought, wow, I hope I don't do that. I, I hope I don't inherit this one, like, you know, because it was so funny. And I went up to my dad and I just said, well, Dad, that's not my biggest worry for you right now. And I was like, oh gosh, but it was so intense that there was some level where for the first time in my life, I felt like my dad could actually listen. And I said, you know, if you've been wondering what I've been doing, what with my whole life, then now's the time you could try to listen. And he relaxed, and he did. I sort of kind of helped guide him through that last bit. So I think that there's a level where, you know, Jesse's just been through this with his family, like the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's just like you get the whole um, extraordinary, right? It's like uh, the mysteriousness of it and the wholeness of it in a way includes all of what you're saying and we're saying, and it's just you have to just do the best to show up for the ride. And if that includes not doing formal practice, that's part of the ride.
Yeah, I mean, you are, you know, you are like mainlining the voltage of like the universe in this, right? I mean, your mom's it's like the worst that you don't be worried about like flipping through audiobooks or whatever. That's like not a problem. It's a lot. Yeah. Sounds great. Good luck.
Sending you metta.
Yeah. Hi, Aretha.
Hi, Aretha.
Hi. Oh, that was really moving. I'm in an experience that feels resonant, but in a different kind of way. Actually, this sitting felt pretty good. Like I almost felt like it just the rage is clarifying, the rage is like grounding me. I feel very clear. Um, and I know, and I don't like because of my upbringing, like I appreciate how you approach this practice, how we approach this practice, that it isn't about pushing these feelings away. Like I know that I can't do that, like given my upbringing, but also the energy of it is so intense. Like the energy of it, I could run a marathon right now. You know what I mean? It's energy. It's not just a thought or a story. It's like I got to do something with it. um, I don't know. It's very I also have siblings. There's a lot of complication. I have this, I'm the sibling that can't be directly involved as much, and I have a lot of feelings about that. And I guess not to get into all of that, but just like the rage. I'm curious about what to do with the fireball that I feel like I'm carrying right now. Like it feels like the rage of 100 women on both sides of the family.
I I think that it might be useful to talk about the rage like in and of itself without, and then this what Jesse just brought up, which is so important, but maybe to keep it separate for a little bit. I mean, you sound like really good with it, like the rage and the energy of it, but I just wanted to offer that one of the things that was very helpful for me in relationship to that um, kind of energy was seeing the volcano here in the Big Island go off. And partly it was so healing for me because in the description of your family, I would, my family, my father had all the airspace for rage, but no one else did. Everyone else was more like your mom with the, my middle sister tried, but it was like, so the dialectic, right? So split. So for me, I wasn't even allowed to have an angry thought.
Mm-hmm.
So when this kind of energy and rage happily and gratefully started to emerge, it was very hard for me to have equanimity with it, to accept it, like unconditionally accept it. And I even feeling like you have to do something with it, right? Like there's the purity of the mindfulness is being able to let yourself drop into the body, right? And notice that you can notice the angry thoughts coming and going, but you're not really focusing on the content as much as like how I saw it was a volcano going off. And living on this island now, it's like it's so powerful because she's a goddess. She's a beloved goddess.
Mm.
So I'm just, if it's often when we don't know how to do what I'm saying, and people do something with their rage, which is often very harmful out, towards other objects or inwardly toward ourselves. It's like when that energy, when we don't know how to work with it, it either is going to be outwardly going out or going inward. And, without careful, even in terms of activism, it's like learning how to harness it so that we actually can be constructive and not cause more harm, right? So in this case, like the idea is that you really start taking the time to let yourself experience it, and also, yeah, running or walking, or you give it the whole galaxy of space, right, to let itself. Look at them, but it's like it's like bubbles up and it explodes, and it's that's why my father's explosion at the end was so funny, because like he didn't know how to work with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I had that thought, oh, I hope I hope I don't explode. I've had to work with it, like it's I'm very fiery energy, yeah. It's okay energy. It's like, in fact, on this, you see here, it's creative energy. It creates land. It's like, but it also creates fog that it's hard, you can't breathe. So it's very natural here to be working with that energy that I appreciate. And I don't know, Jesse, if you have to say anything, but I think taking that piece of this is so important, really, just like so important, because then you can know what to do once you've let that energy like explode or like come up. Like it's creative. It can be very creative, life transforming energy for change. If you listen to it, it helps bring about change if you can, as we say, sometimes you can't, but
But I do want to emphasize that because it's that we might get into the other parts of it, but just in terms of anyone's practice, there is like you're going through something that feels so important in terms of Vipassana, that and that you're doing it right. That like it's you, I mean, the sense, you haven't said these, I'm gonna put some words here, right? Of like, there's sometimes this sense of like the the intensity of the energy feels like unbelievable, right? Like unfathomable voltage, unfathomable intensity, kind of uh, current of experience, right? That it feels, there's times where you're like, no one could go through, no body can handle this, right? No, that it requires a much bigger space, right, than this like little body can handle. But what's so amazing about the practice is you can, right? I mean, just to reinforce that part of what Michele is saying is that you can sit with this, and it as long and sitting with it is not the only thing to be done, and that there's times where it's like we get into our bodies and we use the energy, and we use, physically use the energy in terms of creativity, we use the energy, but to be careful about trying to transform it because you don't like it, or because we feel like we need to control it, uh, coming out of a kind of like contraction around it, that there is a way that we can learn to just not resist it, and that the the consuming nature of it actually isn't dangerous, and the strength that comes from that experience, from being like, oh, you don't need to actually manage it, it can burn through and nothing is hurt by that,
Mm.
is so important to have moments of that, or bigger experiences of that, where it's like, oh, this is just voltage. And I would say one of the things to look at, because you're already having a sense that, wow, you were able to sit with it and it's very clarifying, right? There is something kind of neat about that, right? That sense of like, is it in the body or is it in the mind? Not like you need to come to an answer, but as like an interesting way to investigate it is like, is this a physical experience or a mental emotional experience? That 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 bifurcation tends to be considered a real thing in this tradition. Um, and I don't want to overlay any sort of assumptions that you go through in terms of your own practice, but it's one way to bring a little bit of interest into it, right? Rather than kind of managing it or mitigating the intensity, it's like, is this feel like it's in the mind or in the body? Or ultimately, what is this dance between mind and body that is playing out in terms of this experience? And sometimes that is a way to bring some interest in it that makes it less scary, that makes it less concerned that it's going to kind of harm ourselves or others, and that we don't fear it. And yet, of course, what we often will see is like, of course, there are mental patterns that lead to physical sensations, and physical sensations that inflate mental patterns. And, there's a process, right, that unfolds, but that it's really powerful that you're sort of having an experience that you actually are able to be with in a very powerful way, and that you don't necessarily need to do anything with it. There might be times where creativity or expression or just getting out, because it doesn't feel like we can kind of manage it because we're trying to contain it. But there's other times where the sitting with it is actually not containing it, but it's also not propagating it. And there's ways of doing that I think it feels like you're in a kind of prime place for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I so appreciate what both of you said. I'm a choreographer and a dancer, and there's a way I do feel okay with it right now. Like I feel very I know there can be a tipping point. I feel entitled to it. I feel like I'm going to use it and use that it is transformative energy. Um, and that's such an interesting um, question or something to work with, that I feel yeah, getting a little bit of space might also be helpful too, like what that might allow for in terms of a little bit of space
Totally.
to investigate it in a different kind of way. Yeah,
Because it can be rage. I mean, it could be sadness or just wanting, or any of these things can have there's a similar truth to all of these, what might be considered overwhelming intensive experiences, that we ultimately can learn to be like, oh, it's being in, just having this wanting burn through, or having a sadness burn through, or whatever it is, that actually there is a way that we can be in relationship with it, it's more intense but less harmful, which is a kind of paradox, but real.
yeah.
The gift of Vipassana in its purity is that we learn it with like sound or breath or hands. It's just like the breath is one of the clearest, is that you're not trying, if it's vague, you let it be vague, right? If it's shallow, you just let it be shallow. So you're not letting anything go, because that's even too much doing, right? You don't have to let anything go. You're just letting it, you're giving it that space that we're talking about, where it just comes and goes just as it is. It's really hard, right? It's really hard, like with the sound, sight, smell, taste, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, right? That ability to just, here's this intensity of energy you're describing, and we're saying, just let it be,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it shrinks into this very manageable, like little delicate whisper of a cheek, of the wind on the cheek. That's not
Yeah.
that's not what letting it be is. That's controlling it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's why I was giving the image of looking at a volcano going off, because you're
I love
watching
that.
the volcano go off, but you're not like doing it. You can't control Pele.
Right. Right.
Sometimes she goes over the road and through a house, right? But it's like you just keep making space for Pele.
Mm.
Our friend was saying how there's one of the stories of Pele and how she got into the caldera there at Kilauea. It was that her sister Hi'iaka actually carved that out, so she and put her in it to kind of like at least
Mm.
manage the intensity of her outbursts. But that he was saying, when he's watching these things, he feels like he's seeing a ramp getting built outside of the caldera, and so
Mm.
he feels like she's maybe finding her way out of her her sister's
Yeah,
prison.
Hi'iaka is a dialectic, right? That's
Mm.
her sister. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
She helped,
And
she represents the hula, for example. So
Mm.
like you have, given you're a dancer, you might appreciate that that's part
Ah,
of it's
water.
part
mhm, different integration.
wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
In terms of the rest of it, I mean, Michelle, I know that sounds, there's many layers. The one thing maybe I would say at this point is just to it seems probably obvious, but and it's the same with our practice. Okay, there's the version where you're just in it and it's like when it burns through. And there are the many ways that we learn to manage and be like, okay, actually that's too much right now, and I'll go to the breath, or I'll not sit, or I'll, you manage the intensity dependent upon what your system is up for in that moment. And that is a constant negotiation in terms of your distance or your proximity to your family, especially if things feel like, if she makes a decision to, hasten the end of her life, or if that starts to become clear and you decide that it feels important to go, just that, that there are a lot of ways to consider doing that that might be more protective for you, and that it's really worth thinking, like not staying with your family, for example, or finding
Oh yeah.
other, just like what does that
Yeah.
look like in your schedule and all of that. Of course, are things that
Yeah.
we would encourage, because you don't want to, you want to give yourself that ability to like give yourself, manage that dynamic according to what you're needing. It's a
Thank
very
you.
simplified version, but it seems, of course.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, the martyr thing is very strong in my family, like being the martyr. So, and it's very programmed. So I have to, yes, having boundaries and not being perfect around all of that is very, very important. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, both of you. I
Yeah.
so appreciate both of you very much. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Hi there, Harry.
Hi, Harry.
Hi, just a thought on it occurred to me is maybe choreograph it.
I just want to jump in about the norms of our engagement, to just be engaging with us if you have a question or something
You
around
told the
your
chat.
practice.
What's wrong with the chat? It's not on.
Oh, I don't know who that was or what that was about the chat, but anyway, just enjoying like normal that we have our kind of that we're
Safety.
not cross talking and kind of engaging one another in terms of the questions. That's all.
That's why the chat would be useful, but it's not working.
No, I turned
It
it
would-
off for that reason.
It's always a difficult thing, but after many years of teaching, it's like it creates a kind of safety that um, we can't even put words on. But if somebody knows that if somebody's very vulnerable and they know somebody might say something at some point, it doesn't create a safe container in this context. So we're sorry, because it's a great idea. It's not like it isn't a great idea, but it's like just have to hold that we don't even expect everyone to understand it, but it's a deep, even very unconscious. It's like we're holding the hand of everybody's unconscious in that context. Thanks, Harry. Yeah. But
And just that
always,
clarification that this time, and just as always reminder, because we always have sort of like movement in the community, it's like this really is a time that if you have a particular question about your practice or what we're teaching and the instructions, that it's a time that we want to help you with whatever you might be coming up, but that it's not a kind of community conversation. Yeah. And we definitely understand the limitations of that, but it also feels like
we
Michelle's saying,
understand.
it's like the protection that we feel capable of, like holding things in the way that we need to hold them in this context. Yeah. Hi, Julie. Let's see,
Hey,
can
Julie.
you unmute there?
Yes.
Yep, got
Yes.
it.
Yeah. I'm going to try to say this in a simple way. I've recently come across a couple of situations with close family or friends where their perspectives are very it's in the political spectrum kind of, and it's about how they perceive certain situations politically that are totally the opposite of mine, and I have to engage with these people, and particularly one family member. I've invited her to have a conversation in a safe time and space sometime without, not on texting for sure. But the part that I'm trying to manage myself is my own level of not being able, even capable of knowing how to begin to set the boundaries in a kind, clear way. Like you can't change the way another person thinks. Anyway, that's just, I'm not going to say much more, except I'd like some advice, I guess. Are you there?
We
Yeah,
are.
I have a question. Did you say you invited this person over for a conversation, or
No,
did,
she lives at a distance. We'll have to have a phone call.
okay. Because sometimes, I mean, I know a number of people in this kind of situation that are just not engaging in certain conversations, and it's either clarified or clarified when something comes up that, the subject is changed. If that, I mean, I'm not saying that's what you want to do, but it's one option in terms of being able to be with people, but like setting a kind of it's a kind of safety really, where if there isn't an ability to have a real conversation where there's investigation and openness, if it's a closed, if it's two opposite closed ideas, it's usually more helpful not to, to either state that's not what one wants to do, or
Hmm.
it's a possibility. I'm not saying that's what you do, because there's a whole other level of discussion about what to do if you do. But if you don't, um,
Yeah, for the one situation, I think that's what I'll have to do. I'll have to say, um, just basically, what you expressed the other day. I can't even go there.
right.
And she'll understand because I think she knows why I'm feeling the way I am. Um, but with my sister, I feel like we have this family WhatsApp kind of community where in the family group, we've set the boundaries. We don't talk about any political things, right? So, and that's good. So, but then there's been some members that I keep trying to break through, and we keep trying to sort of maintain the boundaries. Well, this has gone to just her and I now. So I said, we need to talk about this, have a conversation actual, about this. And I'm kind of, what I'm doing with myself is I'm kind of working within my own emotions about it all. So I'm basically trying to just not let myself get all worked up about this conversation, but just kind of let myself go, well, okay, like you'll do the best you can. And in the meantime, just live your life and try to enjoy whatever, and practice ongoingly. um, but it's it's like somebody talked about volatility, about sometimes those kinds of confrontations can feel very volatile and scary, you know. And I mean, I was really shocked by this other person, by what she said, and all of a sudden it became, I knew it was there, but all of a sudden it became so personal that I went, like, it was a shock. It was like, oh, you know, I knew it, but I couldn't believe it on one level, you know, that she was that way, that she would express those kinds of volatile. Anyway, it's just, people's views can be so twisted, so twisted. Anyway, I will have to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, Michelle and I, I'm sure many people have various, you know, similar experiences and understanding. And I think that piece that you're sort of expressing right now, just the grief of the loss in it,
Yeah.
is really important to not forget that element of it, right? That there's like the shock and the expectation and the sense of confusion and betrayal and unfathomability of it, but also that sense of like the ground shifting under us, you know, these relationships of love and care and history and whatever else, you know, that feel provide, you know, some sense of stability for us, and to have the instability in that be reflected, you know, so intensely, it is very it's destabilizing, you know, and to appreciate that sense of loss in it, and the grief, you know, of really suddenly how distant you can feel from someone, people, or many, you know. And I, you know, of course, we don't have a miracle cure for changing people's views, you know. I mean, I think that a lot of it does seem to be very individual circumstances, you know, where I think what you're doing, and, you know, the invitation to a more meaningful conversation, you know, that's not just text messages, like you said, right? It's not just like shooting out things. It's like, you know, a space where you can express what you're feeling and hope maybe to understand what this person is feeling. And I think sometimes what's unsatisfying about that is you really have to kind of go into those like you are, which is not a lot of expectation. And it doesn't sound like you're going into that with the expectation that this person or these people are going to change their minds, but that you want to, you respect the relationship enough and this person enough that you want to try to find a way to be on some level of good terms, you know, and understand where the boundaries might have to be in terms of conversation and stuff like that, in order for it to be, and that therefore it might feel more distant.
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm the eldest in my family, and there's 9, all of us, and I'm the eldest, and I find myself being kind of in the role of expecting myself to kind of somehow um, mm, be a modifier or something, you know, be a kind of a modifier of all the tempestuousness or the differences and the total polarity differences, and so I go in and out of it carefully, you know. Some people I'm building relationship totally exteriorly of the political perspectives, which I find disturbing enormously. So we don't even go there.
Mm-hmm.
Other people I just stay away from in some ways, you know. This particular sister, she's, I don't know why I'm even trying something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a good basic. I mean, I think that I think there's often a value in trying because you know you should and that it's important to try. And there's some limit to how much of your entire life's energy you're going to give to trying to build a bridge that just keeps burning or whatever. So, I do think there's probably a limit to where you want to keep doing that if it's not working to even make a meaningful connection. I've
Yeah,
certainly have.
that's kind of what I'm seeking here in this question is, where can I find the safety, where the protection for my own mental stability about it?
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like you're in one thing I'd say that I have come to believe, rightly or wrongly, is the sense that wherever I may have felt a kind of more crisis around changing someone's mind or opinion about things, has felt that feels less important at this point, where it's like, oh, that's what's actually going to stop a certain situation or really change things in the world is not like convincing each person of it. Like, actually, how political power gets built is not by just convincing everyone. It's by a whole other strategy. It doesn't mean some of that isn't important, but actually, like, changing how things actually are in the world is not just a matter of like convincing all the people we care about of like a certain view. And so that if you take the pressure of like, actually, my concern about the world has its stakes actually in different kinds of actions. My concern about the relationship is actually a different concern, and that requires different tools and different approaches. And that I think you're kind of intuitively already doing that. That you're not feeling like the world depends on your sister coming to agreement to you, right? Where it's actually like, okay, that's going to happen else some other way if it happens, and however you might be involved in that, but that your relationship can be, I don't want to say healed, protected, worked on, perhaps actually outside of that even conversation. So I think there's
Yeah.
something that you're doing that feels very wise in that, if
Okay.
poignant.
All this.
Yeah, I would also maybe emphasize that I think we're living in times where that polarization can cause almost like two extreme distances in relationships. And just in our lives, like that you do the best you can, right, to have the relationships, even if they're very superficial, something happening there. If you care about the people and you want to keep something alive there, I think there's so much grief. There's so much grief as it is, and loss, right, in these times around what you're saying. At least in my own family, it's like that. And so it requires, like Jesse says, you really have to see what about this relationship is important to me, and how much contact, and how, and boy, it's either going to mature the heart or break it to bits, like, right? It's like what I see you doing is you're maturing your heart. And that's not a painless process.
Yeah. And being able to just talk about it right now with both of you really helps, because I'm not going to find an answer specific, it's like a process, and appreciate much everything said. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for raising it, Julie. I know it's
Okay.
very relatable to many of us. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much.
Mm.
Okay. Oh, let's see.
Pedro.
Pedro, we'll do one more. Yeah. Let's see. Pedro, can you unmute there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So this is a basic question. about the Dhamma that and because I'm relatively new, I don't understand. I think as you Jesse mentioned earlier, um, touching into the body or touching into the mental emotions, and I've seen that written before about mental formations, emotions being mental, but I always experience emotions as being very physical. And in the Dhamma, why is it mental? Why isn't there a big portion body?
Yay!
Good question.
Such a
Very
good
good
question. I'm sure we'll both have a few things to say, but I think the most important thing is just you keep looking. You keep looking and you keep feeling and you keep trying to get closer to and investigating, of like what feels true in this context and what feels true now and what feels true now. And that can there's a huge range of what can feel true in any given moment and different kind of degrees of concentration and degrees of mindfulness and all kinds of things going on. So I think that it's rather than the sort of me say to you, well, it's just this is the way it is. The more important thing is always going to be great. Keep checking, keep looking. Like, what do you notice when you see more and more momentarily kind of what's happening? The tradition would point to this idea of namarupa, mentality, materiality, as being like so powerfully interwoven and interconnected, and um, a causal force between those two that's very hard to discern, and very important to understand the relationship, and that really the only way to do it is to keep looking. But it would ultimately come down to the idea that they are distinct in a very subtle, fundamental way that helps us understand why how this whole thing keeps unfolding, and why the relationship between heart and mind. Heart and mind is sort of the same word, chitta, and then body, mentality, materiality, that they're co-creating, they're co-conditioning, and that there's something in the seeing of that and fathoming of it and the direct experience of it that's important. But also to not, the Buddha was very clear of like, don't just take my word for it, ehi passiko, look for yourself. And so that sense that part of what I resonates in terms of what you're describing of is so important to recognize, that actually the relationship between an emotion and a physical experience is very strong. Whether they're ultimately the same or not is like, an interesting thing to keep exploring and an important thing. But that dynamic is also very important that you're describing, right? That they're not totally separate. They're not just like, it's just this is mind and this is body and they have nothing to do with one another. That this kind of correspondence between them is like very powerful and fascinating and mysterious. It is considered to be a distinction ultimately, but not something to enforce, more like an encouragement to keep looking. I don't know, Michelle, what do you think?
It's just, I think there's so much to be said about it, so it's trying to keep it a little more concise. But it's like if you look at how we're teaching a non-conceptual awareness. So if you look at my hand right now, and we use a word, Michelle's hand or hand, in this practice, that's considered to be less than 1% of the experience. There's the word hand, like there's a visual image. If we ask you to do it with your eyes closed sitting in meditation, we're trying to get you to notice that there's a thought about the experience, hand or my hand, or even memories of the past experience of the hand. But that's that instruction of just seeing if you can be with the experience directly, not through the thought process, is how we would encourage you to experience fear or anger or happiness or compassion. The spiritual emotions, the difficult emotions, all of it is, the instruction is, as Jesse is saying, to, explore, because if you had an experience that you would label fear 2 minutes ago, it's not going to be the same 2 minutes from now. And that's what we're trying to get across more than anything is, is to just, this is about exploring and anchoring your attention enough to be clear enough to explore. And so if you explore, sometimes you can have an emotion, and it might feel like just one little thought that just went through. It could be one little thought that you could actually look at and go, oh, that that might be fear, right? Or that could be compassion, but it's just a thought, right, that just went through. It has no reverberations in the body. But then there could be a body, some body sensations where there's no thought yet, there's no content, and you're wondering, huh. And then it might manifest into some thoughts that you could maybe say, oh, this is grief and doubt and happiness. It's, that's how wild it is. That's how wild this is. But being able, as Jesse says, to try to teach discernment and distinguishing. There's, with the rising movement of the breath, there's the physical sensations of it and the knowing of it. Consciousness is the knowing of it. The physical sensations are physical. The knowing is mental. They are simultaneous, but they're inseparable but distinguishable. For example,
So reading. I was saying reading between the lines. I suspect that what you're saying is that if I refine my perception more and more and more, I will probably discover eventually that emotions are mental.
no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the more you refine your perceptions, the wilder it gets, and the more you won't care that much about whether it's physical or mental. But because you'll see that it's happening so fast and it's so wild that you just go for the ride.
I got it.
Yeah, I
Thank
want.
you.
It's such an important. I want to add the question of like where it's a similar thing about like the self, right? We say, well, this idea is there's no self, and yet I really feel like me. Seems to be something very coherent happening, and for the last number of years, that feels real, And so, am I supposed to be getting rid of that? Am I supposed to, see through that? And I think, of course, there's in different traditions, different lineages, there's different ways of relating to that. What I feel like is so valuable about this approach is that it's not denying the fact of existence or that we are real. Like there is a realness to this. It's just trying to say that if you keep looking at different perspectives with different, qualities of mind, we'll ultimately see a huge range of what this sense of me is or is not. And rather than say this is the right thing or this is the wrong thing, the fact that it's not stable is the most important thing. The fact that it's not just one thing punctures a hole in what we believe it to be, right? So it's similar with the mind and body, which is to say, you may have experiences where it feels so unified, right? This oneness of mind and body, and or the universe and self, and right. It's not to say that that's a wrong experience, but we should be careful about thinking that's the like totality of experience, that that's the pinnacle. And then you keep watching, things also can seem very momentary, right? Where it's just mind, it's just matter, and they're fluctuating between each other. And it's not to say that's the ultimate truth, but it's more like, wow, when you do see that, it puts the rest of it in perspective. That our need to have things be solid, coherent, consistent, that sense of solidity that we tend toward, it's not to say that it's wrong, but it's to say that our attachment to it, or our belief in its ultimate truth, does lead to, it's based on not understanding, and that it can lead to all kinds of problems. And so the getting more and more perspective in terms of mind and body, in terms of self and non-self, is really always the thrust of the practice. It's like keep looking, keep looking, keep looking, and that never ends. That's even the Buddha, even fully enlightened beings will keep meditating. It's just like because it's the natural state of like curiosity of the nature of all of this. So yeah, keep looking. Sounds great.
We get to explore more and more and more and more.
Woohoo. Sometimes it's like you just want to close that door.
Right. Then you say, I don't want to explore anymore.
Yeah, I'm gonna
That's
just switch between audiobooks. Exactly.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's all part of it.
Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your practice.
Yeah. See you next week.